Yes, we'll start.
Samruddhi.
Hello.
Yeah, you are audible.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Samruddhi Pawar, PG student of Walchand College of Engineering, Sangli. I'm host of today's session. It's a moment of great privilege and honor for me to extend a hearty welcome to all of you today at this event. On behalf of the Walchand College of Engineering, Sangli, I cordially and respectfully welcome Mr. Shantilal Jain, President of today's session, Mr. Vatsal Gokhni sir. I welcome Engineer Hemant Padalkar sir, Secretary of ISSC Mumbai. I welcome Engineer Madhav Chikodi sir, Member of Technical Committee of ISSC Students Chapter, and I welcome Mayur Tambe sir for this session. We welcome all the head of the departments and faculties of all colleges present here for this session. I heartily welcome all the coordinators and students who are attending today's session. Once again, I welcome all the distinguished invitees present here accepting our invitation. As you all are aware that we have gathered here for guest lecture on innovations in design speeches institute about ISSC students chapter. Now I request Engineer Madhav Chikodi sir to share information about ISSC student chapter.
Thank you, Samruddhi.
Sir,
Am I audible?
you may continue. Yes, sir. You are audible. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I am just keeping my audio off because you can listen me peacefully. Today's guest speaker, eminent structural engineer Vatsal Gokhani, ISSC Secretary Hemant Padalkar, coordinators of ISSC Student Chapter, Professor Patil from Walchand College of Engineering, Sangli, Professor Magar Patil sir from MIT World Peace University, Pune, Daulat Chinani from Sabusidi College of Engineering, Mumbai, Fatima Traudi Madam from Vivekan Education Society Polytechnic Chembur, and Professor Pratish Avasthi from Chameli Devi Group of Institution Indore, and all my dear engineering students. Good evening to all of you. First of all, I welcome you all for today's program. Friends, since I am with all engineering students, it takes me back to my engineering days of 1990. Friends, we were not having even phones at our home, and photocopying was done only in Mumbai. Otherwise, we used to write everything. It may be paper, it may be assignment, everything. There was one computer language that was Fortran programming, which only our professor may be knowing. Touching the output of dot matrix printer was like luxury for all of us. We had to search after graduation as where to do the job, how to uh, how to approach, since there has been very less opportunities for civil engineering students. Friends, today, good or bad, is weighed by likes and dislikes. But for us, we had to experience first, and then we used to understand as this or this field is suitable for me. Anyway, those were the days. But today is the era of WWW, that is World Wide Web, which is in your fingertips, on your fingertips. In a moment, you come to know what exactly is required for me, and lot many doors are open for all of us. It is up to us in which door to enter and how long to go. Indian Society of Structural Engineers was intended initially for practicing structural engineers. Later on, it was extended for rehabilitation consultants, civil contractors, geotechnical consultants. The only requirement was he should be a civil engineer. Subsequently, the committee decided to enroll students of third and fourth year engineering colleges. This will help students from their career point of view, as well as it will bridge the gap between industry and institution. IICC had a plan of organizing one program in each institute at least twice a year. Friends, today we are in COVID-19 pandemic, and this situation has brought us an opportunity of virtual platform. I can say it is sort of blessings in disguise. Now it seems virtual platform is very practical solution so far as our lecture series is concerned. As far as IICC is concerned, we have planned various topics and speakers for incoming programs. The topics are going to be very interesting. Let me know few of those are rehabilitation and retrofitting of bridges, advances in composites, demolition techniques, learning from failures, and many more. Friends, I am sure you will enjoy the lecture series. At the same time, I appeal all of you to share your projects synopsis, which can be published in ISSC Quarterly Journal. Lastly, I wish you all the best, and let's hear to our expert, Mr. Vatsal Gokani. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for your thoughts and for your information. Now, I request Rushikesh to introduce our institute and share brief information about today's topic. Rushikesh, you may continue.
Okay, thank you, Samruddhi. May I audible?
Yes, yes, you're audible.
Okay. Good evening to one and all. I'm Rishikesh Jadhav, President ISSC WC Student Chapter. It is a great privilege to give me a chance to give a short information about our institute. Walchand College of Engineering, Sangli is established in 1947 with a single program leading to Bachelor of Civil Engineering degree. Our institute became a government-aided autonomous institute for the course of UG, PG, PhD program from 2007. In the Department of Civil Engineering, having UG, BTech in Civil Engineering, and for the postgraduate, MTech in Civil Structural Engineering and MTech in Environmental Engineering with NBA accreditation for the period of 5 years available. Along with that, AICT Doctorate Fellowship Program and Pradhan Mantri Research Fellowship Program for the PhD courses also available. Especially our department received a various fund for the research dissertation work from the various government and non-government organizations like a Department of Science and Technology, DRDO, that's the Defense Research and Development Organization, Border Road Organization, CSIR, Indian Institute of Technology, National Institute of Technology, and other various sources. For the purpose of consultancy, our department earn more than 1 crore rupees per year for the testing and consultancy purpose from various labs. That is for the testing of various material testing, ground testing material, breach inspection, structural health monitoring, various labs available in our department. So this is a short introduction about our department and about our college. So now I move towards today's session information. Our today's topic for the session is innovation in the design of high-rise building. So tall building having essentially become need of our current population changed in the world, which lead to increase in the demand of tall structures. The rapid growth of urban population and limitation of available land, the tall structure are preferably nowadays. So high-rise building have been known to possess a high risk toward the lateral load due to its slenderness nature, which has inspired structural engineers to come up with an innovative solution to these efforts. So it was a very informative session, hopeful for all the students. So thank you for giving me opportunity. Over to you, Samruddhi.
Okay, thank you, Rushikesh. Now I request Shreya to introduce our honorable chief guest speaker. Shreya, you may continue.
Thank you, Samruddhi. I'm Shreya Shekhe. It is great honor for me to introduce today's chief guest speaker, Engineer Vatsal Gokhni sir. Mr. Vatsal is a partner in a Mumbai-based structural engineering firm, Gokhni Consultant. He received his Bachelor of Engineering from VJTI Mumbai and Masters in Structural Engineering from University of Texas at Austin. He has 16 years of experience in structural design of tall buildings and other types of building structures. So his experience regarding high-rise building is definitely beneficial for all of us. One instruction for students, you have to fill attendance sheet. So we will provide one.
Shreya, hello.
So
You can continue.
Okay. There is one instruction for all students that you have to fill the attendance sheet. We will provide you a link of attendance sheet in chat box. Just go through that once. Thus, without wasting any time, I request Engineer Vatsal sir to start with his session. Sir, you may continue the session. I'll hand over the session to you. Thank you, sir.
Hello. Hello, sir. Your voice is not coming. Hello, sir.
Samruddhi, both audio and video
Hello.
not.
Sir, your presentation is visible, but you unmute yourself.
Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Voice clear, sir.
So
Yes,
you could
yes.
not hear anything, right? Up till now?
Hello.
Hello?
Sir, nothing is audible. Hello, sir.
Hello? Am I not audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Your
yes.
voice is audible.
Yes.
Yeah, so an introduction was given regarding the tall building and why is it required. The main difference between a tall building and a short building is, both these buildings have gravity loads on them. Both of these buildings susceptible to lateral loads. But the main challenge in a tall building is that these effects that the tall building undergoes increases exponentially, and so that certain important and significant behaviors that are there in the building are very sensitive, and they come to that is what starts governing the design. So let me give you an example of this. A building is nothing but a cantilever which is coming out of the ground. So if you see, there are two images there, one with a smaller building and one with a taller building. The smaller building has a height of h, and the taller building has a height of 2h. So if the load applied on this building cantilevers are the same, the bending moment at the bottom increases by 4 times due to the lateral loads. The vertical load increases only 2 times, but the bending moment due to the lateral loads increases by 4 times by just a height difference of 2, when the building goes from a height h to 2h. And one of the most sensitive aspects, which is the deflections, increases by 16 times because it is proportional to the fourth power of the height. And so a building which is just 2 times, say a building which is 50 meters and a building which is 100 meters, the 100-meter building with the same structural system would be susceptible to 16 times, approximately 16 times more deformations than a 50-meter tall building. And the bending moments at the bottom would be 4 times that of a 50-meter tall building in a 100-meter tall. So this is the principal difference between a high-rise building, and these behaviors such as support bending moments and deflections at the top and subsequently the vibrations at the top become of prime importance when you are designing these tall buildings. Secondly, as you can see, the building, the bending moment at the bottom changes by 4 times even if you change the height of the building by 2 times. So what becomes very important is controlling the cost of the building to keep this building cost within reasonable amounts. So that is another most important challenge in a tall building. So I'll go step by step wise on what are the challenges in a tall building. The most important challenges in a tall building are the lateral loads acting on it, the wind loads that are acting on it, and the seismic loads that are acting on it. The wind generally, as per the codal provisions, becomes predominant in the strength design of the building over 30 stories. It also becomes predominant as far as the material consumption is concerned, because to counter these deflections that are 16 times more for a double height, which grow exponentially when you increase the height of the building, you need to exponentially increase the size of the lateral load element, lateral load resisting elements, and that is where the challenge is in a tall building. That is why the lateral loads are really important in a tall building. Second thing, in a slender tall building, the entire building overturning becomes an issue. The third thing is the deflections. A lot of the times these vertical and horizontal deflections, and the vertical deflections in the form of axial shortening and foundation deformations, and the horizontal deflections in the deflections in the form of wind deflections at the top of the building are generally start to govern the design. Strength of these buildings, strength of these elements such as beams, columns, and shear walls are not that much of a concern, because once you size these buildings for these deformations and deflections, you need to put in much less material than you would put in a smaller height building for a given cross section area. But at the end of the day, what matters is the size of these lateral load resisting elements. The fourth thing is, because there are a lot of deflections and these buildings become very flexible as they increase in height, the vibrations of these buildings, the vibrations in the buildings become very important. Say you are sitting on the 50th story of the building and there is a windstorm that is coming your way. You will definitely feel, the vibrations of this windstorm. And what is foremost important is controlling these vibrations so that somebody sitting on the 50th story of the building does not feel uncomfortable that the building is going to fall down, or does not feel uncomfortable as in, why have I put in so much money in buying a flat or buying an office or renting an office at that 50th story. So that again becomes very important. And the most important thing is the cost. The most important to control all these deflections and vibrations and the lateral loads. The most important thing is coming up with a structural system which is very optimum. So basically, the endeavor is to increase the moment of inertia of this lateral load resisting system, such that the least amount of material is required in the building. So this is the most important challenge in the tall building is how to use the material in the most optimum way. So these are the main challenges in the tall building, and the rest everything just falls into place if you address all these challenges one by one. Now I'll come to wind forces, which are one of the most predominant forces in a tall building. So wind forces act on a building are not just static loads, they are dynamic loads, and because the wind comes in gusts, so there is a fixed component to the wind, and there is some fluctuating component to the wind. You might have felt this when you're sitting in a on a mountain in the open, and the wind does not just really come and hit you continuously. There is a fluctuating component to the wind as well, and this fluctuating component combined with the slenderness of the tall building, because the building is very slender, as we discussed, the deformations as we saw increase exponentially when the height of the building increases. They interact with these dynamic and components of the building, the components which are fluctuating in the wind, and they this is what controls the wind. Secondly, these wind loads that are acting in one direction, we sometimes feel that if the wind is acting in one direction, because of the slenderness of the building, it will vibrate in the same direction. But that is not true. Even with wind in predominantly in one direction, there can be some crosswinds and torsional components which make the building vibrate in the direction perpendicular to the main building. And this is what needs to be analyzed, and this is why the wind loads on the buildings become very important as the building becomes slender, and hence is very important in the tall building. The next slide that I'm going to show you is just a 1-minute video of how the oscillations take place in the building. It will give you a feel on what you need to control as a structural engineer. I don't know if this is a poorly designed building or not, but this is something that happened on the building at the 50th story. And I'll just play the video. This is a chandelier. This is shaking. If you are sitting there, you would not be really comfortable with the chandelier shaking with respect to the floor. It's a very scary situation. This is kind of a long video, just 1 minute, but you'll understand what happens in the. You can see the oscillations in the wind with respect to the oscillations in the chandelier with respect to the mirror. This is what happens, and this is very uncomfortable for a user. The building will not fail, but this is very uncomfortable for a user sitting there dining in a very sophisticated restaurant. So this needs to be controlled by the structural engineer. Now these wind forces are actually calculated using the codal provisions, but the codal provisions will give you a very approximate estimation of the forces, and these are valid only for a certain assumptions that a building is properly rectangular or properly square, and it will not give you detailed calculations for these accelerations and vibrations that are happening at the top of the building. So then what is the way out? And a way out, what we generally do is we actually make a life-size model, not a life-size model, the scale-down model of what actually is happening around, and we estimate the building based on the historical data of the wind that is collected from various locations. And in a wind tunnel, you test this in a much smaller scale. Combine it with the flexibility that is there in the tower, and then you estimate what kind of forces that are going to come on the wind structure on the tower, what kind of vibrations that are going to come on the tower, whether they'll be within the control, whether they will not be within the control. And these such wind tunnel studies are very important to be in high-rise buildings, especially when the building goes above 150 meters or the building is very, very slender. So this is what we generally do in a tall building. The example I'll show you later on. I'll show you a DBR and the design of a tall building which we have done in our office, and this will include a wind tunnel study, and I'll run through that wind tunnel report also for you later on. The other forces that act on a building are seismic forces. Seismic forces are generally the real seismic forces that you design for are generally about 1/10 to 1/8 of what seismic forces the building would really endure during a seismic force. So what is the reason? These seismic forces are very, very high, and you cannot design really for these seismic forces, and you make the building go into the non-linear mode, that is make the building crack so that it just stands. So this is the philosophy of seismic design. So that is why a lot of times, around 30-story buildings, the wind forces generally tend to be higher than the seismic forces. But you need to design to make sure that the non-linear behavior or the cracking behavior is there is cracking, but there is no collapse, and this can be done using ductile detailing. So this is again very, very important for a tall building. Secondly, what is important for a tall building is the tall building will not just vibrate like a pendulum that is coming out of the ground, and it will have these various multimodal effects that need to be checked when you analyze a tall building. So for very, very tall buildings, you need to do something like an analysis where I'll show you, what kind of analysis we've done in our office, and you see the kind of vibrations that happen. This kind of a design not do in a regular design office, but see the behavior. This is the behavior that happen in the real earth, which cannot be captured. So this is what wind tunnel is to code-based forces. This is this kind of a performance. This time history-based performance is what the difference between the codal analysis and this behavior. So this is known something like a performance-based design, and this is again a state-of-the-art in the design of tall buildings. So you study the real performance of a building and find out the accelerations and find out the forces on the building. The other important aspects in a tall buildings are vertical deflections. Now, why vertical deflections? Because a lot of times we need to segregate the lateral load resisting system from the vertical load resisting system, as in the load resisting system that takes care of the lateral forces in the building is much thicker, much stronger than the columns which are placed on the periphery or at various locations. These columns are pretty small as compared to the cores and the shear walls. So what tends to happen is in these tall buildings, the deformations, the vertical deformations of these strong and heavy shear walls is much less than the vertical deformations of the axial deformations of these columns, these very slender or small columns. And what happens is there can be differential shortening, and this will lead to serviceability problems, cracking of the partitions, cracking of the glass, and you would not like to stand in an area which is sloping because it has deflected. Now, mind you, again, this will not actually create a structural failure, but this is a serviceability failure. So these failures need to be addressed, and these failures are addressed in really tall buildings using staged analysis, which is again a state-of-the-art analysis that you do in tall buildings. This is a step-by-step analysis to understand what kind of deformations happen as the building goes up and over time because of the differential creep and shortening. So this is another important aspect in a tall building. Other important aspect in a tall building is a foundation design and settlement. Tall buildings tend to have foundations which are not spaced apart. You know, they tend to have foundations which are very close together, and these close together foundations, they interact with the soil below or the rock below or the and what happens is the deflections that are that you calculate for these individual components are much smaller than the deformations that you calculate for the entire foundation system. And because of this, the differential settlement, that is the settlement from one end of the foundation to the center of the foundation, becomes of utmost important again for serviceability purposes. If you do not design this well, the building might not fail, but the building might sag at the center and not the deflect at the center and not deflect at the ends, and this might create a serviceability problem where you will not enjoy, or it will be not feasible to use the building, or sometimes the building will tilt on one end. So these things need to be taken care of by sophisticated analysis. So these are the four main things that need to be taken. And the second other thing is, since the lateral loads are very, very important, a lot of times in these slender buildings is overturning takes place in these buildings. And so differential settlements and overturnings in these tall buildings are absolutely important and need to be taken care of. I'm not saying that all these does not need to be taken care of in a small, shorter building, but all these aspects that we discussed, the vibrations, the seismic loads, the multimodal effects, the differential settlements and overturning, and what we and the overturning and the differential settlements and the axial shortenings, different axial shortenings of the shear walls and the columns are actually very sensitive in a tall building and need to be checked explicitly. So this is over and above what you do in a smaller building. Now, since the floor space area, since the building is a tall building is slender, you do not have a lot of floor space area to put in the material that is required to resist all these forces. And so innovative and very, very efficient structural systems are very important, which maximize the cross-sectional moment of inertia of the building, and for a given amount of material, they produce the least amount of deflections, lateral deflections in the building. So depending on the height of the building, you will have to use more innovative and very efficient structural systems. For example, structural system is something like a shear wall system, or a beam and column system, or a combination of a shear wall and a beam and column system. Sometimes, if it is a steel structure, you use braced frames. So how you use that in a tall building becomes very important. So, for example, a braced frame, the bracing that you use in a steel structure, approximately 10 to 15 story building would be okay. But the moment you go above that, these braced frames will start to become inefficient. That is, you will be able to design the building, but these braced frames will become so heavy that the building will become very expensive. So then you move to a more rigid system, which is like a system with concrete frames. Before that, let me classify the structural systems. Structural systems can, in general, be classified as interior structural systems and exterior structural systems. Interior structural systems are structural systems which generally focus on the central core, around the center, around the lift shafts and the staircases, and the remaining areas are virtually, they have smaller columns to maximize the effectiveness, maximize the usability, and maximize the views outside. So these are interior structural systems, and there are certain structural systems which engage the perimeters very well, like mega braced frames and everything, and these are exterior structural systems. So in interior structural systems, you have these concrete frames, you have these braced frames. You can use the shear wall kind of a systems. You can use the shear wall kind of a systems with these perimeter moment resisting frames. You can use an interior. You can use an interior core system with outriggers, which will increase the width of the lateral load resisting system, which is the outrigger structure. So depending on the height of the building, it would be very important to select the optimum structural system. And this again becomes the most important. This is very important to as far as usability and cost is concerned. So the other structural systems are for the exterior structural systems are bracing type of systems, tube in tube type of systems, and super frame kind of a system. To give you some example of dual systems, take for example, this is a building which is approximately 180 to 250 stories tall, and a dual system would work very well. A dual system is a system here which uses shear wall as well as frames. So you can see there is a lot of shear walls at the center. There is a flat slab around, and there are these columns and perimeter frames which engage these columns, increasing the moment of inertia of the entire system. So if it was only a cantilever system, it would sway more, and then you combine that with these perimeter moment resisting frames, and they tend to come into effect on the top floors, and you get a very efficient system, which is a dual system. Now, if you have a higher structural systems, taller buildings, what you need to do is you need to use more innovative structural systems like the outrigger systems. So you have kind of a shear wall core at the center, and you have these exterior columns, and you need to engage the entire width of the building, because this width of the building is pretty narrow for a tall building which is 250-300 meters. And to engage these entire width of the system, what you need to do is introduce these strong elements that are connecting the core to the outside. So for example, just imagine you are standing and somebody pushes you, so you will fall down. But just imagine you are standing and there is a table next to you, and you are taking the support of that table. So for somebody who is pushing you, he will have to put in much more effort to topple you. So this is the kind of an outrigger structural system. Then there is something called as a coupled outrigger system, where you have a coupled shear walls with certain cutouts at certain floors, and these cutouts make the system an outrigger system. But in effect, they are coupled shear walls which engage the entire width of the building. And these systems can be very well effectively used for very slender buildings. So with this, I would like to end my presentation. And what I'll do is I'll go to a live example that happened in my that we designed in my office. This is around a 175-meter tall building, and I'll show. I will start with presenting the design basis report of a high-rise building which is approximately 170 meters tall, which was designed in Mumbai, and the slenderness ratio is 1:9. I hope everybody can see this high-rise report. Can you see this, whatever I have presented?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
So the height of the building is 176.9 meters, and the base width was pretty slender, as in the lateral load resisting base width. And I'll show you first the plans of the building. So you see that this is the building. It's pretty slender for 180 meters. And so what we have done is we have taken a solid core at the center, which is near the lift and elevator lobbies. You can see these elevators here. You can see these staircases here. You can see these lobbies where you can get out of the lift and the elevators and access the flats. And to minimize, to increase the moment of inertia, it was kind of an outrigger or a coupled shear wall system where we take the shear walls in the flat area and connect it with the central core. So this effectively increases the moment of inertia of the building. And at certain locations, at certain floors, we close these spaces up to create outrigger coupled beams. So this is the basic building, and on the lower levels, there is a parking floor that is happening. So you see there is a parking happening around the building, and this is a ramp which you can access the parking with. And in fact, on the lower floors, these gravity columns, these are columns just for the ramp. These are gravity columns. These do not take part in the lateral load resisting elements. These vertical frames, these vertical shear walls are what are actually taking the lateral load. So these gravity columns are in fact floating from the ground floor as cantilevers, because we needed open space. We needed open space for the 9 meters cantilever. But since they are part of the lateral load, they are part of the gravity system, we could do that. So this is a pretty complex building, and if you can see these amenity floors, where we close up the spaces, at these amenity floors, we close up the openings, creating 2 stories deep or 1 story deep outrigger beams, so that the moment of inertia of the building increases. So effectively, even though the building is pretty wide at the bottom at the parking floors, the lateral load is only taken by this small distance, which is the main building width. And that was what was governing the deflections, and that was what was governing the accelerations at the top of the building in wind. So what we did was we created this report for the high-rise committee, and I'll just run through the report. So if you can see, this is the proposed high-rise building with 9 podiums, amenity floors, 2-level amenity floors. There is an amenity floor at the top also. There is a service floor, and then there are 40 habitable floors. The typical floor height is 3.15 meters. The ground floor height is 8 meters, around 7.65 meters. The amenity floor heights are 4.2 meters. So up till the terrace level, the height is 169 meters, and up till the top, including the elevations, the height is around 180 meters. So the various codal provisions that we have used in the design of the building. In addition to this, we've also used the tall building code, which is the 16700. Now you see the various dead loading parameters that we have taken. This is standard, which is there in IS 875. The IS 875 live load parameters that we have used for residential slabs, for corridors, for refuge areas. And then these are the earthquake loads. So the zone factor, it is in Mumbai, so the zone factor is 0.16. The importance factor is 1.2. The response reduction factor, where you reduce the earthquake loads that we talked about to ensure and provide ductility, we have taken a response reduction factor of 4 as per the code. And based on this, we've calculated the seismic forces based on IS 1893. And we've used minimum 1.1% seismic weight as per IS 16700. And the seismic weight comes out to be, the lateral load comes out to be 11,700 kilonewton. So that is approximately 1200 tons of lateral load which are applied to the building in a seismic event. Similar to that, we found out the preliminary wind loads based on the gust factor method. The gust factor method is used for slender buildings, which is again given in the IS 875. And for this tower, the lateral load is 1200 around 1200 kilonewtons as well with the gust factor. So the cover requirements of the building with respect to fire and durability requirements, the grade in that building. So we went up to M60 grade concrete, right up from M60 to M40 grade concrete. Because the building was slender, we did not go below M40 grade concrete. The foundation system that we used was a pile draft kind of a system. Again, I'll show you the foundation system. See, this is the entire building area, and we used 1000 mm dia piles with a thick 2.75 meters, that is approximately a 9-foot high raft, that is 1 story, which was connected throughout. So just imagine the thickness of the raft, and these are all piles. Each pile would take in the range of 500 to 600 tons of load. And certain perimeter columns, which we can see, you can see, we've just taken 2 piles or something. These piles rest on rock, so differential settlement is not that much of a concern. But if it is in an area like Kolkata or Delhi, differential settlements would definitely be very, very important. So these are the stiffness modifiers that we have used for various types of analysis. For the serviceability analysis, which measures the deflections, we have less cracked property modifiers. Here we have more cracked property modifiers for the seismic and the code level design winds. Then the load combinations that we've used in the structure. Sorry, the 1000 mm piles I said was it has a downward capacity of 775 tons. And these piles, once installed, a lot of these piles will be tested to ensure that these 775 tons are met. In fact, we are also conducting a static load test on the pile to ensure that this capacity is reached, because this capacity is a very high capacity, and we are installing one pile as of now, as we speak, to get it tested using a static test method, so that all the other piles can be installed later on. Because there is a lot of overturning in these slender buildings, these uplift capacities, because the building moves in one direction, the piles in one direction come in tension, even though there is a lot of vertical load. And you can see these uplift capacities of the piles also become important. Otherwise, the piles will just slip out of the ground. So this is also not what needs to be checked. There is a structural checklist which we've given to the iRise. The slenderness and everything is described. These are the load. These are the various loads that are acting on the building. This is just. I'll just run through it. And as you can see, in the Y direction, in the wind, the maximum deflection is 409 millimeters. So since it was not under control, we had to go and do a wind tunnel testing to see whether these deflections and these accelerations at the top, this is what we calculated using the gust factor method, so that these accelerations and deflections at the top would not actually create a problem with the building. So this is the gust factor that we've used. This is the gust factors that we've used. This is as per the IS 1895. These are detailed and exhaustive calculations. And these are the calculations. These are the loads that are applied on the buildings. And there are various cases how we apply the building, how we apply the load on the building. There are 5 different cases in each direction. So this is a lot of work. We generate about 70-80 load combinations for each element, and we design the building for that. The other most important thing is the mode shapes of the building, how the building, the natural frequencies and vibrations of the building. And what is important is in these mode shapes, the principal mode shapes, X direction, Y direction, and torsion. Now in the design, the torsion should not be the first and second mode, otherwise the building will start vibrating, and this will create unnecessary rotations in the building, which might amplify the design, which you cannot capture in the design. So the torsion, it is important that it is the third mode. So as you can see, it is around a 55-story building, and we kept the time period to around 5.5 seconds. The second time, and this is the Y direction is the governing the design. So basically the Y time period is governing here. In the x direction, the translation, the second mode shape is 4 seconds. And here the x direction is important, and the torsion is 3.7 seconds. And here the third mode is governing in torsion. So this is what the behavior of the building is. These are the various deflections of the building. And these are the various calculations. Now what I'll do is I'll just move to the wind tunnel testing report. It's an interim report because we were getting some problems with the codal provision. So we tested it using the wind tunnel. And as you can see, this is the wind tunnel report given by RWDI. So directly I'll move to the model on what kind of model we created. So you can see this is the building, and this is the model that we created for the RWDI created for the wind tunnel. And this is a rotating table, and the table rotates, and winds from various directions are actually blown on the building to find the forces on this tower and the acceleration. So what this report does is it finds out the deflections in the building. Based on this, it finds out the interaction of the forces in the various directions. So wind can come from any direction. So there are 24 load cases that they have given. 100. So this first load case says governing 100% in one direction, 60% in the other direction, and the torsion in the wind is 55%. So they have given 24 load cases to be analyzed just for the wind condition. And they have also found out the vibration analysis. They have also done the vibration analysis. Yeah, so they have also done the vibration analysis for winds at various time periods with return periods. And here for 10-year return period, the vibration should not be more than approximately 15 millig's. 15 millig's is 15 times 10 raised to minus 3 into acceleration due to gravity. So the acceleration should be less than that. And here we could see our acceleration is only 7.5 millig's. So we are significantly in the range. And this is an interim report, and the final report is yet to come. So we measured everything, and this is how a building is actually designed in a design office. So I'll close the presentation now, and I think we are done with the presentation. So this is around. Hello.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are done with
Okay.
the building presentation. So we discussed the various aspects that are important in the design of a tall building, and then we went ahead and saw the actual design of a tall building in the design office. So you could get a grasp of what happens in a design office.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, thank you very much, sir, for sharing your deep knowledge and about innovations in high-rise building. Like you have said about diagrid structures. Your session was full of enthusiasm and valuable knowledge, which will be useful for the students and for us also for our dissertation and research work. I think now let's start with the question answer session. Um, if participants, anyone having doubts, they can unmute themselves and ask the questions.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
I want to ask one doubt about differential shortening of columns.
Right.
I feel that topic is almost nowhere covered in textbooks. Maybe in some specialized books it may have been covered. So
Right.
where can I get any guidance qualitatively and quantitatively on that topic?
There is a paper or a book by Mark Fintel, The Design of Reinforced Concrete Structures. by
Yeah,
Mark Intel.
yes, sir.
So that has a that's an old book, but those have very good calculations and for a real life example, and you can
Okay.
refer that and maybe make your spreadsheet or something for later use from using that.
Okay. Thank you. One more question. In your report, you have shown that you are taking stiffness modifier as per the code, I guess,
Yes.
for serviceability and for collapse limit state.
Right.
So there are two sets of stiffness modifiers. So
Right.
are you going to do two models to incorporate that, or
We
how
have
it
to
is?
do sometimes through 2 models, 3 models, 4 models, whatever. Sometimes if there is a basement and there are certain effects of the basement slab, we need to do even 4 models. But normally 2 models are done. For the gravity analysis, we need to do a third model because sometimes when you model shell elements in ETABS, you cannot directly take the gravity load from these models because what the shell elements does is it fictitiously transfers the axial load to the shear walls for the columns. But you
Yes.
do not design the slab for these loads that are using the shell elements which are transferred to these elements. So you need to make a third model, which is an individual story model, and you need to check the forces of the columns also and multiply them by say 50 times if it is a 50-story building, and then check and compare the axial load from the main model also and from the individual model also. So you need to make multiple models for the project. Yes.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you. And in one of the slides, you have shown your full building model where there are 2 or 3 basements, and it was seen like you are modeling the retaining walls also. Is it a
Yes.
standard practice?
Yes, it is a standard practice, and you model the retaining walls as well as you remove the retaining walls and models. So that is why this is something known as a backstay analysis. So in backstay analysis, you model the retaining walls. Then for the backstay level, which is the ground level, which these slabs transfer the force from the inside to the outside using the slab. So that slab needs to be given various stiffness modifiers, various ranges of stiffness modifiers. So there also you need to do multiple analysis, and one analysis also done without these retaining walls. So there are 3 analyses, 3 different ways the foundations are checked. So it's a lot of analysis basically.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you. And one last question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So I heard this kind of thumb rule that torsion is generally advised to be avoided in first 2 modes of vibration for a building.
Right.
And even in your report, it is shown in third mode.
Right.
So what are the implications if torsion comes in first 1 or 2 modes, and how to take care of that if that happens?
Our
Take care
code
in the
generally
design.
does not allow torsion in the first 2 modes. Let us be
Okay.
honest. But there is a torsional amplification, which if the torsion is in the first mode, the building might start twisting and there might be a lot of amplification, because what happens is the center of mass and there may be some accidental eccentricities that come in the building, and which you might not be able to actually calculate using the analysis, which might happen in real life. So that is why it is not really allowed. And if this mode of failure starts governing, the building might go into an uncontrolled torsional kind of an effect. So that is why it is not allowed. But if it does, you need to do some, if it goes, you need to do some higher level analysis like performance based analysis if you want to get over it. And really, subject the structure to ground motions and see what is happening in the torsion. But with the codal provisions, if you use the codal provisions, generally torsion is not allowed, because the codal provisions make a lot of assumptions. And to validate those assumptions, they've given a lot of restrictions. So the code also gives you a lot of thumb rules that is taken on judgment. And when you do things on judgment, you have to be very, very restrictive. And that is why these restrictions are there in the code. So it is preferable that the torsion is not there in the building.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sir, I have one doubt.
Yeah.
Sir, how to decide the location of outriggers? Means position of outrigger if in a high-rise building.
Most of the times it is governed architecturally. Let me be honest, there'll be lots of textbooks that tell you that the outriggers should be placed at this location, this height, that height. But a lot of the times it is governed architecturally. Ideally, 1/3, 2/3 height would be the ideal location. But if you cannot get that, you will have to live with whatever you are given by the architect.
Okay, sir. And sir, outrigger with press system is means outrigger with belt truss system is beneficial or just outriggers are beneficial to
Depends on the height of the building. If the building becomes very slender and the torsional effects start to contribute, you might have to put in a belt system. If the torsion does not start to contribute to the first and second modes, then you can only use the outrigger systems. But this is
Okay.
for taller buildings. There is no thumb rule as such. You know, this is where structural engineering starts becoming an art as to where you need to place this, what you need to place this. This is just judgment from your past experience and your architectural experience on where you will be allowed the outrigger, where you will be allowed the belt trusses and everything. So it's kind of a judgment, and sometimes you can get away with putting a belt system. Sometimes you can provide a belt system, but generally in India the belts you will not be able to provide these belts because of architectural considerations and FSI considerations.
Okay, sir. And sir, means is there any criteria like we have to provide outriggers beam only on leeward side or all the periphery?
No, there is no such provision. There is no such provision. Whatever works, you need to analyze the structure and see the performance. If it is working, it is working. If it is not, it is not. That is how it works.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir. I have one question regarding pile raft foundation. Means for this building, you use the pile raft foundation. So for that analysis purpose, which software or method is good or
See,
best?
this is not a pile draft in the sense that I am not taking the capacity of the soil also into consideration. If I had taken the capacity of the soil into considerations, the geotechnical engineer would have to do much more detailed analysis in his softwares. But here we've just taken the contribution of the piles. Okay, we have not taken the contribution of the soil in between the piles. So we could just use safe and get away with it.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Hello.
Hello.
Sir. Analysis whether for a high-rise building linear analysis are sufficient, because most of the time under lateral loading most of the elements are subjected to undergoes the non-linear state. So is it required that a non-linear analysis also required?
Most of the times it is not required. But if the building goes about 250 meters, there might be some multimodal effects that if you want to capture, if you want to prevent those, then non-linear analysis is required. Secondly, non-linear analysis is if you're doing proper ductile detailing at various locations, non-linear analysis is generally not required. But I would say that about 200 meters, if you can do a non-linear analysis, because the wind starts to govern, okay, and you might get away with putting lot less ductile reinforcement in these buildings. So in that case, non-linear analysis is beneficial. Non-linear analysis is also beneficial if you are flouting certain codal provisions. As in IS 16700 says that if it is a code exceeding building, you need to use such analysis, and in that case it would be beneficial. But if it is say the building that I showed you, and if you're doing proper ductile detailing in the building 170, 175 meters, a non-linear analysis is not generally required. About 200 meters, 225 meters, I would say you should use it.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. If anyone having any doubts, they can ask.
Sir, one more doubt. For what kind of buildings and what height buildings do we need to go for wind tunnel testing?
Generally, I would personally prefer more than 150 meters, but a lot of times the clients makes that call. So about 200 meters for sure. 150 meters if the building is around has a slenderness of more than 1:7, 1:8. And generally about 100 meters if the building is slender more than 1:10.
Okay.
Approximately, this is my judgment. Otherwise, not really required. You can do away with the codal provisions as well.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Now, I request Rahul for a vote of thanks. Rahul, over to
Yes,
you.
Amruti. Yes, Amruti. Am I audible to everyone?
Yeah, yes, you are audible.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I am Rahul, and I am here to present the vote of thanks for today's guest lecture. I would like to thank our guest speaker, Mr. Vatsal Gokhni sir, for sharing time and sharing valuable experience about innovations in high-rise building. Especially, sir have shared a DBR of tall building, which is very informative to us. Definitely, this information is very useful for the students who is doing project in high-rise buildings. Also, I would like to thank ISC office bearers and especially thanks to Engineer Shantilal Jain, President of ISSC, Engineer Hemant Vadalkar sir, Honorable Secretary of ISSC, Engineer Madhav Chikkodi sir, member of Technical Committee ISC Student Chapter, for the organizing such an informative lecture by the great speaker. Also, I would like to thank our HOD Dr. S.N. Tande sir, Dr. V.S. Patil sir, and all the faculties to become a part of this seminar, and specially thanks to students under ISSC for listening and taking part in the interaction session. I appeal to all the students to take maximum benefit of ISSC platform for the future. And at last but not the least, I would like to thanks for those who all contributed for success of this seminar. With the permission of chair, I would officially declare the end of the program. Thank you, and thank you everyone. Thank you, Vatsal sir.
Excellent.
Madhav sir, you want to say something?
No. Thank you very much, Mr. Vatsal Gokhani. It was very informative and a very great guide for students. Thank you very much. Thank you all the students for participating.
Sir, please share your this attendance sheet.
No, I would like to just say one sentence that all the students should take active participation in all ISSC activities, and you please come out with your questions and any queries you have during your project work. ISSC platform will definitely help you in your all endeavor. And if you are doing some good research work, some work you share with us, we'll publish that in our ISSC journal as well as in the workshops also, the seminars also. We'll give some slot to students as well to just present a synopsis, and you can get good input from the other experts also in the committee. So I appeal all the students to share your experience also, your knowledge also, and take help of all the ISSC experts also for the guidance of your project work. So that is my appeal. So thank you very much for arranging this good workshop lecture, and Vatsal for a very nice presentation. And I think we'll just put this DBR, sample DBR in our ISSC journal also, so that many people, students also can refer to that later on. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.